Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
All right, folks, and welcome back to the Fort Worth Masonic Podcast. My name is Gabe Jagush, and I am a past master at Lodge number 148.
I'm Billy Hamilton, a past master of Fort Worth 148.
And we have a special guest with us today.
Yeah, my name is Joe Jones. I'm a past master of Sam P. Cochran Lodge number 1335 and a member of the Grand Lodge Security Committee.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Joe. We really appreciate you. Folks, as you may have guessed by the introduction of the cast of characters, we're going to talk with Joe, and we're going to talk about Lodge security. And it's going to be with certain recent events. This is going to probably be a valuable and worthwhile discussion. So, Billy, if you want to go ahead and kick us off with some of the introductory questions, please have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for joining us today, Joe. So if you would, let's kick it off by, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic lens.
Sure. I was a Dallas police officer for 29 years. My various assignments, I worked in patrol. I was a field training officer in patrol. Once I left patrol, I was assigned to the Northeast Investigative Unit, where we investigated property crimes within our division. I then later transferred to the robbery unit, where we were responsible for all the robberies in the city of Dallas. I transferred from there to the homicide unit, and that's pretty much self-explanatory. And then during my career, I worked in the public integrity unit, where we investigated crimes committed by any city employee.
Fantastic. So you are the perfect person to talk to about Lodge security then. So excellent. Now, if you don't mind, let's briefly hit upon your a little information about your background in Masonry, and then we want to return to our main topic for tonight, which is Lodge security. When did you join Freemasonry, and how old were you?
I joined in 2002. I was just short of my 34th birthday.
All right. And what inspired you to join?
It was my wife's idea. Her grandfather had been a Mason. And so as police officers, we are sometimes considered introverts or withdrawn because we don't trust anybody unless it's other police officers until we get to know you and figure it out. My wife says, I think it'd be great for you to meet other people outside the police department. And so I joined, and I met some fabulous, like-thinking men. My wife will tell you that it's improved my, what she calls social skills of speaking and talking and meeting with people. And overall, it's just been an outstanding experience. I've made some really dear and really close friends through Masonry. And I was lucky enough for my youngest son to follow me. He was involved in DMLA, and he just completed his year as master of the same lodge I was.
Yeah, and he was also state master counselor, right?
Was a state master counselor of the Texas DMLA Association. So we've been involved in DMLA for 13, 14 years, on top of all the Masonic bodies that I belong to also.
So you had mentioned that you were a past master of Sam P. Cochran Lodge. Was that the lodge that you joined?
That was my home lodge. I belonged to that one, and I belonged to Red Oak Lodge. We started the DMLA chapter in Red Oak, which Billy's young men we were fortunate enough to have them in our chapter also. And so in order to be the chapter chairman or oversee a DMLA chapter, you have to be a member of the sponsoring body. So I dueled with Red Oak when we decided to open our chapter.
Well, and so having been heavily involved with DMLA, you may be able, in a better position than most to answer this. What do you think of the fraternity and how it makes yourself and also the young men that you've worked with? How does it make them a better man?
At DMLA, there's 7 cardinal virtues. I won't go into them, but filial love, love of country, love of God. It does the same thing Masonry does. These young men, they compete in ritual competitions. Mm-hmm. They learn floor work, and when we go to most stated meetings and state events, the young men are in coats and ties. So it teaches them how to dress. for success in the world. We teach them how to tie ties. And when these young men and the Masons of Texas, we get, I will say, a majority support, but there's still some Masons that, like I was when my son first joined, that didn't know a lot about it. If you have a DMLA chapter, if your lodge sponsors a DMLA chapter, I can guarantee you that chapter will feed your lodge. There was, at one time, I had 4 young men that were active DMLAs that had reached the age of 18 that were also Master Masons. And when you get these young men in the lodge, they're used to floor work. They're used to doing memory. If they've been a master counselor, they've run a meeting. They know how the gavels. It prepares them for life, but also kind of prepares them if they decide to go the masonry route to hit the ground running as good young Masons when they get to your chapter. To your lodge.
Fantastic. Thank you for those answers, actually. And now we're going to transition to what really is going to be kind of the meat of our topic for tonight. So, of course, I'm pretty sure, especially being on the Grand Lodge Security Committee, you're aware of several incidents that have happened in Texas recently, right? The the shooting of Brother Wise down in McAllen, the fire at the El Paso Scottish Rite. So, that's what we'd like to talk about is what can lodges do to help secure their facility, maybe to help have a better understanding of what to look out for. On past episodes, we've talked with Dr. David Hill to talk about how do you approach someone who is obviously having mental distress, right, or emotional distress. How can you de-escalate that issue? And there was some great information there, but that's not always possible. And probably the best that we can do is to have a secure environment around us. So if you would, I guess, first of all, would you mind telling us, what your thoughts are about some of these incidents that have happened recently? And then we'll talk about what lodges can do to better protect themselves.
Yeah, at San Peak Akron Lodge, they purchased a security system. They had, I think they got it from Costco or one of the big box stores, and they installed cameras inside and outside of the building. While they're having a meeting, the monitor sits at the junior deacon station. So the junior deacon can monitor while the meeting's going over, glance over and see if anything's going on outside the lodge. My suggestion to them is after dinner, you get ready to start a meeting, go lock the door. Mm-hmm. That way it keeps somebody, if a brother shows up late and the junior deacon sees him at the door, then they can send the Tyler to let the brother in. If it's somebody they don't know, then they can either just leave him out there or dismiss a couple of brothers to go out and see what's going on. It's all about awareness of your surroundings. When you're going to a lodge meeting, when you're leaving a lodge meeting, it's all about your surroundings, scanning, looking. Every time I leave a lodge, I stop, look out the door, see what's there, and then proceed on. So it's all about being aware of your surroundings and knowing if something or somebody looks out of place.
So I do have to ask this too, because this is something that I've noticed a lot is, so you do have that station at the junior deacons. I guess that security set up at the junior deacon station. Is your Tyler, just personal curiosity, is your Tyler inside the lodge room or is he out where the Tyler station is supposed to be?
Yeah, I was the Tyler for Cody's year. And so what there is the door leading into the lodge room. Hmm. Then there's like an ante room there. Well, there's a sliding accordion door, I'll call it.
Okay.
So after they get the ritualistic opening done, then they'll crack the door so the Tyler can hear what's going on and we'll shut the accordion door.
Okay.
But nobody can have, if somebody happens to come along, nobody can really see in and see what's going on. But I personally stayed outside the lodge room. They had a speaker out there. I could hear what's going on. But it brings up another touchy subject, I guess, with, allowing firearms inside the lodge room. Police officers and retired police officers, all the 30-06, 30-07s warnings doesn't apply to us because if we're licensed by the state, we can carry. And so my lodge members knew that I was always armed and I was the Tyler, so I could stay outside. If something come up outside, then I could go and address the situation. But it goes back to, some lodges, they're staunch against it. Some other lodges have a don't ask, don't tell when it comes to that. And I'm not saying that every person in the lodge room needs to be armed, but it's something to consider if you have somebody that's a CHL licensee or licensed to carry now, a retired officer, an active officer. That's something to consider because at least with LTC, they've had some training. If you've got retired or active law enforcement, of course, they've had a bunch of training and know how to assess the threat, approach it, and neutralize it if necessary. But it's something each lodge needs to think about whether they're allowing weapons in the lodge room or not.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think that is a conversation I think each lodge has to have, whether they're comfortable about having it, because according to the Grand Lodge law, we're now allowed to carry, if it is the will of the lodge, in the lodge itself.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that everybody in there should, because we're a constitutional carry state, not everybody needs to be armed, because I don't want somebody who has had no training and a situation comes up and I've got to worry about what's his sight picture. Is he just got tunnel vision and not seeing what's in front of him? I think that's a recipe for disaster. So I'm not saying everybody needs to be in there, but if you've got people that are familiar with guns and may have a little training, it might not be a bad idea for them and only them. And it could be as little as the washer master going to them and saying, hey, I know you're a retired law enforcement, you're law enforcement, you're my guy. If something comes in, you're taking the lead, or you're going to handle the threat that comes in. That's a hard discussion to have when it comes to that.
Gabriel, did you start to chime in?
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about, and you kind of started addressing it, what if a lodge was to develop a formal policy regarding having firearms in lodge? Let's say that they say, yes, we do permit firearms in lodge under these conditions. What do you think some reasonable stipulations would be to kind of maybe temper that, right? Because, us being a constitutional carry state now, like you mentioned, just any Joe Blow can carry a gun now, which, we're not talking politics of that or whatever, but, obviously we want to talk quality control and reasonable lodge policies. What do you think if a lodge had to say in its rules and regs, hey, this is, kind of the expectations we have regarding firearms, or who we want to be carrying firearms and so forth?
Yeah, in my own opinion, the top of your list is any active law enforcement you've got. If you've got retired law enforcement, you've got people in your lodge that are members of the Shrine possibly that shoot on the provost guard. So they're familiar with weapons. Ex-military people, have weapons training while they're in the military. The license to carry individuals might be next. They go out and qualify and they have to shoot, but after they get their LTC, I'm not sure on the policy, but I don't think they have to go qualify every year.
I think it's every 5 years.
Yeah, I think so. But that's somebody, that would be led, next. But, it's a sticky situation on setting that credential. But I don't want somebody that got their LTC, they went and shot 5 years ago. They don't go out and shoot. They don't go out and become familiar with their weapon, and then something happens, they have a malfunction and they're not familiar with how to clear a malfunction on their weapon. And next thing you know, they're fighting with whoever came in and they do know how to clear the weapon. Then, another thing you can do is in Dallas, it's a big city, large police department. In your smaller rural areas, get to know the police officers that work the shift, get to know the sheriff's deputy, get to know the troopers in that county, have first responders, luncheons, dinners, and get them, try to get them involved in the lodge first. If not, see if they'll just pay a little extra attention. Our meetings are on the second Monday of the month, and let them know, second Monday of the month, we're going to be here. We've had some issues around the state. We meet start at 7. We're probably out by 9 at the latest. If you're going to have somebody just swing by a couple of times between those times at the lodge, then you could get some cooperation from an officers there.
Well, in some officers, our police department, sheriff's offices, what have you, may also have off-duty officers that would be willing to do security for some events.
Yeah, in Dallas, the officers could work what we call extra jobs or part-time jobs within the city limits of Dallas. And so that's another option. it could be a little expense for the lodge, but if it's one time a month and you can get somebody out there for a couple of hours, and probably a minimum of $100 for them just to sit in the parking lot. They'll sit in the parking lot, watch anything comes along. He'll get there when y'all get there. He won't leave till the last person leaves. And it'll give you just a little peace of mind that while your meeting is going on, you've got somebody out there to deal with the situation before it ever makes it into the lodge room.
Hmm. So, and I'm sorry, Gabe, did I cut you off?
No, you're fine. Something that, you mentioned was situational awareness, right? And this is, I guess, kind of a two-part question, but I want to bring both of the questions up at the same time. The first part what is the best, like every skill, situational awareness is something you have to practice, right? Otherwise, you don't get good at it, especially when you need it.
Right.
So the first question is, how do you actually practice in an active sense, understanding your situational? The second question is, do you have like a checklist for when you are using situational, the 5 senses or a distance checklist? I know that different types of organizations teach different practices regarding situational awareness. So I'm not sure what he taught. So that's kind of things I'm wondering.
It's a matter of just seeing your surroundings, know what's there, and see if something's out of place. Like most time when you go to the lodge room, you get to know what people drive, the vehicles that they drive. So if you come out and most everybody's either got Masonic plates or Masonic sticker on their car. If you walk out and it's a car that doesn't have that doesn't have a Masonic emblem on it, that you do not recognize, then that's something that might make bells and whistles go off in your head going, this vehicle doesn't belong. It's just small things like that. As a police officer, when we're standing and we're talking to people, say you approach somebody in the parking lot and you're trying to talk to them, we're always taught, and a lot of people will get mad at officers because they won't look them in the eye. We're watching your hands. Your eyes are not going to do anything. Your hands are the ones that's going to go for a weapon, whether they're balled up, they're tensed up. It's your hands that are going to cause damage, not your eyes. So we may look at you for a minute, but we're going to be watching your hands and watching your body language. And body language is a big thing. If you go out and somebody's relaxed, they talk to you, what's going on, you kind of tell them about masonry, things like that, and you're holding a conversation. That's one thing. They go out, they're agitated, they're tense, not dressed properly for the weather outside, things like that, and just read people. But situational awareness is, like I said, you walk out and you see a vehicle that don't belong. You see a guy standing in the middle of the parking lot for no reason. It's just things like that to be aware of your surroundings. Does it work every time? Absolutely not. You go out to the parking lot, some guys, hunch down behind a vehicle or something and pops up, and then all of a sudden, there you are. So I'm not saying it's fail-proof, but you just watch your surroundings. You know what's supposed to be there. You know where it's not supposed to be. You know if something looks out of place, and then that ought to cause the hair on the back of your neck stand up and say, we've got a situation here. We need to reevaluate what we're doing, whether we go to the parking lot, whether we lock the doors to see if they go away. We get 911 out there and have an officer run through the parking lot. There's no reason, if a situation doesn't look right, to make a call to 911 and say, we've got something suspicious in the parking lot. Can you have an officer come by and just run through the parking lot and check it out? The officer get in the parking lot, flag him down, thank him for coming, talk to him, let everybody get out of the building into their cars and go about their merry way. And then you can go down to your local substation. Dallas has 7 around the city. Smallers may just have 1, and say, we've had some threatening phone calls. We've had some graffiti. We've had people hanging out in the parking lot that just doesn't look right. We've had these incidences around the station. We meet, like I said, second Monday. Can you make sure somebody just kind of swings through to make sure we don't have an issue that arises from us not doing it?
As the nights get longer and it gets darker, what are some best practices?
And it goes back to, and I know a lot of lodges are suffering with finances, but make sure it's well lit outside. Light the parking lot up. If you can, like we talked about, get the security system where you can kind of look at the cameras outside before everybody starts to leave to see if you see anything in the parking lot. But darkness is a bad guy's friend. They can hide and get away from everything. The lighter it is, it discourages them to a point. But if you can have got a security system where you can see the parking lot, it's lit, then you can go to the video, look at the parking lot, see if anything looks out of place. And another thing is, everybody leaves at different times. If you can try to leave as a group, strength in numbers, they're less likely to roll the dice with 4 grown men leaving than 1 leaving. And so I think the key is make sure you're all together. It lessens you becoming a target if there's more people leaving. Somebody's less likely to approach a group of 4 or 5 men than one single person leaving. But it's all about, if you can light the parking lot as much as you can, be sure if you've got security cameras, look at the parking lot before you leave. And then, like I said, just make sure that everybody leaves in a group, not everybody at one time, but, usually your worship master and your lodge secretary is the last one to leave and lock up. Be a good brother. Don't leave them by themselves. Hang around with them, let them lock the building up, and everybody leave together.
Now, a lot of lodges try to be family friendly and family inclusive, right? So, I know that at Fort Worth Lodge, and a bunch of other lodges around frequently have the wives there or the kids there that come for the state of dinner. Some of them leaving starts and after the meal ends. Some of them hang around. What are some additional considerations that we may have to do security-wise if wives and family or kids attend with us and they leaving separate?
Yeah, if you've got to have a committee to kind of hang around and make sure that families get to their cars. If you're having a big family event where you're having an appreciation dinner before the meeting or something, and you're going to have a big group of family there, you may have to just pass the hat, take up a collection, get you an off-duty officer there to make sure that the families are safe. I wouldn't let, especially now with, like you said, getting darker early, let wives and children leave that lodge without at least 2 or 3 brothers escorting them to their cars. I mean, the meeting can hang on for a minute if they're not going to hang around for the meeting. If they do hang around for the meeting, my advice is lock the door and get them into an inner room within the lodge that they're going to have to come. If somebody does make it in, they're going to come all the way through the building to get to where the wives and children are. Hopefully by that time, somebody will hear something come out and we can intervene before they get to the room where the families are.
So, Joe, I did have a question about the lodge facility itself, right? Like the grounds. I remember when I was the general manager of the Grand Lodge Library and Museum that you were part of the security committee that came out and did an assessment of security for the Grand Lodge building. And there was a list of recommendations that were made that I remember having to go over with the board of directors for the library and museum. But some of them were interesting things I'd never considered before, right? Like if you have trees or bushes that are close to the entrance, right, that provides a natural hiding place. Mm-hmm. Do you have any recommendations for things that lodges can do to make their building and grounds more secure in that fashion?
Yeah, it goes the same thing. I know people like to have shrubs around the building, but then again, that is a perfect hiding place for somebody. And not very many people are going to climb a tree to wait on you, I don't think. But it's just do an assessment where you think somebody could hide. I know a lot of people have fire escapes. For people getting on top of the building, they're probably not going to get in the building. But if you have AC units and stuff on top of it, just try to minimize access to the building with ladders and things of that nature. And like I said, the bushes and stuff around the building, try to minimize that as much as you can, because that's a natural place for not only people wanting to do bad, but I mean, the Grand Lodge, that big bush that was out the front, there were homeless people that camped out in it. And so not only from the criminal standpoint, but you're going to have people that hide behind the bushes for using illegal narcotics because the police can't see them behind that. Homeless people setting up camp there. So as much as you can minimize hiding places with shrubs and bushes, that would be ideal.
Well, and I imagine if you do purchase a security system, if you have cameras outside too, that'll help keep avenues of easily viewable area. Yeah,
the one we do, there's one by the front door, one by the side entrance that goes into the dining room, and a couple faced out toward the parking lot. You can see both doors. You can see the parking lot, and they share a parking lot with a church. And so they'll make a donation every month to the church just to show their good faith, and the church keeps the lights pretty well bright. Mm-hmm. And so you share a parking lot with somebody, it's a a good relationship to have to make it work to where you can use their parking lot and they're paying to keep the lights working and all and things of that nature.
All right. So going to the security system, you said that your lodge, Sam P. Cochran, had bought a big giant box from one of the big box stores and set it up at the lodge. I guess one thing I would like to talk about is a lot of people think that there's a massive expense with setting up security cameras and such. But there's really different tiers there that they can do, right? So there is kind of a DIY, do-it-yourself setup that most lodges can afford. You wouldn't happen to know how much that costs for that security system that you set up, would you?
I don't know. I can try to talk to the secretary and see what it was. And it comes down to whether you want it monitored, whether you want recording 24/7. There's all kinds of cost options. They can either drive the price up or keep the price down. If it's going to be monitored, that's going to cost you more money. If it's going to be recording 24/7 and then set up to delete at a certain point, that's going to cost you more money. If you're just using it just to view it while you're in the building, then that's probably going to be the cheapest route. And if you could buy the system and have some knowledgeable brethren in the lodge, then they can probably wire it, or there's even wireless systems that you download the program on a monitor or something, and then you can view it like that, where it's not monitored, it's not recording.
Right. Yeah, and those are available through Best Buy or Sam's or Amazon.com, and they're pretty easy to set up at a reasonable price. But like you mentioned, there are tiers. If your lodge is wanting to have a more secure setup, you can set it to where it'll record. And nowadays, it's usually a digital hub to where the police can go in with the thumbstick, with the thumb drive, and just record the footage. Grab the footage if there is an incident, God forbid. But the monitoring system actually. I think a lot of people would be surprised. It's not as much as you think it would be, because I have monitored system for my houses, through ADT. I think I pay about $180 a month, and that's to monitor 2 houses. So it's not that much at all.
Yeah. And working in robbery and homicide, whenever we would go out on a call, first thing we want to do is, do you have video? And if you does it record? And we would take our thumb drives or a CD, and that's the first, bit of evidence that we need so we can actually see what happened. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that was the break. You get a license plate, suspect description, or something that would help you on your case. So, video is very valuable in that aspect.
One of the things sorry. One of the things I wanted to ask was, in terms of bringing strangers into the lodge, right? There's kind of 2 ways that this happened. One is when we invite candidates to come meet with us, or I guess not candidates because they're not balloted, prospective candidates, right? And then the other is obviously when we have stuff like open houses, right? Which there have been years where the Grand Lodge has said, hey, you have to have an open house. And then there's just been years where lodges of their own would want to try to do an open house. So the first one I wanted to tackle was the open house question. If, let's say, the Grand Lodge says you have to have an open house, like we had a few years back, or a lodge wants to have an open house, you do that in a way that doesn't compromise the safety and security of the lodge, that doesn't allow people to canvass to scope things out, or just not let creeps in. It's a hard thing to do.
It is. That goes back to, if you're going to have an open house, have enough brethren in there. If somebody comes in, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. Let me show you around the lodge. And so you can kind of control what they see. Here's the lodge room. Here's what we call the ante room. This is where we eat. This is the kitchen. There's no need for them to go into the secretary's office, storage, or anywhere like that. If you do have an open house and you have enough brethren in there, then assign people, let me show you around. And that way you don't have people wondering. They say, what's there? Well, that's the secretary's office. It's locked and the secretary's not here. Well, that's where we keep our paraphernalia. If you decide to petition lodge and we get you started, then at some point you'll see that. But until you become a member, that's something that some of our secrets that we're not going to reveal to you right now. So you can kind of control where people go in your lodge, and you can come up with excuses that tell them, you know what, you're not, there's nothing behind this door you need to know about yet. There's nothing behind this door you need to know about yet. Here's the basic lodge room. That's what we call an ante room. Here's the dining room. Here's the kitchen. That's about all they need to see at that point, so you don't let them wander.
So basically, you control the flow of traffic from start to finish.
Exactly. And you know, if you get lucky enough and you have a bunch of people show up, put 2 or 3 in a group, assign one brother, and let them take that group. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one, but you still controlling where the group is going. And that's the main thing, is just control what people are seeing. If you don't want them casing, what we call casing the lodge, you know, if they get asking about what's your security system, well, we have one, but until you become a member, then we'll let you know what goes on. But you don't have to tell them everything that goes on with the lodge if they're just perspective and showing up to see what it's all about.
I got to say, if a visitor asked me what kind of security system we would have, I'd immediately be super suspicious of them.
Yeah.
Right,
Be
yeah.
a red flag for you right there. But and probably nobody will ever say that, but we kind of think of worst case scenarios in law enforcement of what can happen. So
So
I said canvassing earlier, and yeah, you said casing. That's what I meant. I was I was thinking about the people that were doing the political canvassing in my neighborhood before we started recording. So when you have a prospective candidate, right? So this is now not an open house scenario, right? Where you have a guy who at least is putting himself out there as being interested, right? Like, because some of these guys say they're interested and they're still, conspiracy nuts or whatever, right? But you're in the process of getting to know a guy, and you might be inviting him to come by the lodge or whatever, right? Like, I know at my lodge, they never get to come in straight into the dining room or anything like that. Like, they have to have a meeting with us in a board, like it's a conference room in the basement first, right? I know some lodges that never let the candidates near the lodge building, right? Like, they meet with them at a restaurant first, right? What are some practices that you recommend for lodges to seem like things to do?
Yeah, and Aaron Tazinski, who's the chairman of our committee, has put together a background class on how to do it. Yeah, you probably need to get to know these individuals. If you meet with them, go to coffee, go to lunch. What do you do for a living? What's your family status? What got you interested in? Ask some hard questions to these individuals and get to know them. If you got a standalone lodge room where it's just the dining room, kitchen, lodge room, secretary's office, if they have to come by and meet them at the lodge to have these conversations, let them in the dining room and that's it. Don't let them in the lodge room. Let them in the secretary's office. Keep them at bay until you can really and truly see if they're interested in it. What their motive is. Why are you interested in masonry? Do you have any family that were masons? Where do you live? And then simply, well, I live at such and such an address. Write that address down. You can get on your CAD, your tax appraisal website. Every county's got one, and look up and see if he's telling the truth about where he lives. I know we used to talk to people and they say, I live at such and such address. Do you own the house? Yes. Our next step is go to Dallas CAD and pull up and see who's the owner of that house. If he comes up, he's not the owner, then you got something, you said you own the house, but the tax appraisal district says you don't. What's the deal? And so it's little things like that you can think of. If you get somebody, there's publicdata.com and stuff, run a background check on. Find out as much information as you can about them, meet with them off site, find out what their true motive is. And then if they convince you, then at that point, before you vote on them, if you want them to come down and eat dinner with you to get to know some of the other brothers, but just be sure you know who you are bringing into that building before you bring them into it.
You mentioned the address check, right, and running a background, then also running a background check. Let's talk red flags, green flags, right? When you're talking to a guy and he's expressed interest in masonry, what are some red flags that kind of make you pump the brakes? And then I guess conversely, what are some kind of more?
Yeah, I mean, the first big question is, what got you interested in masonry? Do you have family? Did you watch whatever the Masonic movies are? What got you interested? Listen to what they got to say. In my instance, my wife's grandfather was, her partner at work. He joined the lodge. And so that showed my end. If he can't give you a good reason, then I saw the Dan Brown movie, or read the book or something like that, and I'm really interested. I had an uncle that was a Mason in another state. Some reason other than I just want to do it. There's got to be a reason what intrigued you to join Masonry. And we tend to be blunt. Have you ever been to jail? You ever been arrested for it? You ever been to a drug rehab? You ever been to alcohol rehab? You ever been in a psychiatric hospital? Have you been arrested for a mental evaluation? Questions like that from the law enforcement side, that's some of the things that throw up red flags for us. Now, green flags are just like I talked about. Yeah, my grandfather was a Mason. I've got a brother that's in the United States, a Mason. It's kind of been a family deal. I've been interested. I hear them talk about things, but I don't know what they're talking about, and I'm interested in learning. And then it's still, if he's got a solid story, you still go into the other questions. You ever been arrested? Do you ever been to a drug rehab? How much do you drink a week? It's a simple question like that. If they come up and answer all these questions correctly, you run a background check on them as much as you can get from public data or someplace like that, and it shows no criminal history, then you start to understand the story. I mean, you can even contact other Grand Lodges in other states to see if they actually are telling the truth, that they have a relative that's a member. I mean, it sounds like a lengthy process, but you've got to do your homework. We've got to guard the West Gate and not let anybody in who throws up some of those flags.
So what I'm hearing about this, and it's slow down the process of bringing in someone, get to know them, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of lodges they feel the crunch of, we need new members, new members, and sometimes they overlook some of the...
And we've had people come through our lodge, and the only reason they wanted to join the lodge was so they become Shriners, so they become Scottish Rite. They go through, they get their Master Mason's degree, they turn in proficiency, they join the Shrine or Scottish Rite, we never see them again. And so, they're going to be dues-paying members, but do you want quantity or do you want quality of brothers that are in your lodge? So you're going to have somebody that's going to be dedicated to your lodge, and we're all, three of us on this podcast are deeply involved in the York Rite, but we don't neglect the Blue Lodge and our zeal for the other bodies.
Right. That makes sense, because and you bring up there are, quality control is not just about security. It's also about, is this person going to be valuable and helpful in the long run?
Right. I mean, and he'll be an excellent member for the Scottish Rite and Shrine, but if our Blue Lodges don't survive with
Those
good
don't survive either.
do good work in the Blue Lodge, then the other ones are not going to be around. So you've got to try to keep the members you get involved. And like I said, we're all involved heavily in all the appendant bodies, but we try not to. I know you two especially don't neglect the Blue Lodge, where the foundation of everything is. I mean, I may step on some toes with that statement, but that's just the way I feel personally, and not the Fort Worth Masonic podcast.
Oh, don't worry. We have a disclaimer at the beginning of every episode that gets played. So one of the things that I wanted to ask about is about, the youth organizations, right? So up until you were appointed a deputy member for International Council, you were the director of youth protection for the Texas Demolay State Association. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask, so we've talked about, things we can do for the lodge, things with individual members, things that we have to do, and we have family involved in the lodge. But, as you well know, youth organizations are a step, right? They're a totally different ballpark. What are the kind of protection, like, let's say I'm out at a lodge that doesn't have a Demolay or Rainbow presence yet in the area, and I say, hey, we have enough young men interested in starting a Demolay chapter. We have, some security cameras around the lodge, things like that. But what is the kind of education and the kind of steps that a lodge needs to take in order to actually be able to host those bodies appropriate, and the different and more stringent practices that are involved?
Yeah, Demolay International does an outstanding job with youth protection. When I started the chapter in Red Oak, I filled out more paperwork to start that chapter than I did to buy my house. Every year you have to renew your membership. And so they send you a questionnaire. Have you done this? Have you been arrested for this? Alcohol abuse, drug abuse? And they do an in-depth background check on the advisor. And it goes back to, and they have a rule for every one DMLA, you have to have 2 advisors. Now, say your son got involved in DMLA, you're an advisor. If you want to transport him by yourself, that's fine, your family. And so there's exceptions made for that. But if somebody's son, say, wanted to go to government, you would have to have 2 advisors to go to government day to transport him to government day if his parents didn't go. So DI does an outstanding job of youth protection. The biggest thing for youth protection with us is that to get to the adults, you do not get caught by yourself with a DMLA. You just don't do that. If we have to have a conversation with a DMLA, 2 advisors are in the room when we have a conversation. On the kid side, it goes back to social media and things like that. But they really stress youth protection and DMLA, and it's works the same thing in the lodge. If somebody's wife is in the lodge, then you need to have 2 Masons there if he's not there to keep everybody in check. So she can't see anything was said, anything was done. It's the same thing with DI, is just the protection of the youth, protection of the families, that they have the rule in place where for if you got one young man that's going to go to a state event, if his family doesn't take him, you have to have 2 advisors to transport him and oversee him the whole time they're at the event.
So, and I remember from the annual review, you even had to report, like if you had traffic tickets, you had to report everything.
Right. I had a member of Red Oak Lodge that was wanting to become an advisor. Great. Let's fill out paperwork. He filled out paperwork, sent it to him. He calls me and says, I just got a call from DI. Really? That's what they say. They want to know about a ticket I got in Arizona 3 years ago. And so he had to take the ticket. So DI does their background check very well. And so he had explained to them, I paid the ticket, and they said, okay, it showed up on there. We want to know the outcome of it. So DI really does their homework on anybody that becomes an advisor or adult volunteer. And we have members of the lodge, if they come by to a meeting, they're Master Masons, they can sit in the meeting, but they decide they want to go to government day. And so say his friend's son is in our chapter and the dad's not going to go. And he says, well, he can take him. No, he's not going to take him. He's not an advisor. He hadn't been through the background check. He's not cleared. He's not going to take him. We have to have 2 advisors that's been through the background check to transport this young man.
So it is taken very serious. So that's actually super.
Yes, you do the youth protection with DMLA International. They take it very serious, and knock on wood, we haven't had an incident in Texas in years of anything like that happening. They take it very serious, and as the state staff, we take it very serious too. We've done youth protection seminars for the youth, for the adults, and then we put them together and go over it. With the youth, it's more social media, things like that. The adults is watch your kids' social media and things that we focus on and child abuse too. If you see something, say something. Because in Texas, it's a duty to report if you suspect it. So we go with that with the adults, and then we put them together and we go back over the social media stuff so everybody understands. They take it very seriously in DMLA International on the youth protection side.
So actually, I did want to mention too. So you said social media is a lot of what they check on the kids side. I think a lot of lodges, if they look at prospective candidates, if they check out their social media, they may be able to catch some of those red flags we spoke about earlier, because I know at our lodge, we've done that.
Yeah. And me being the age I am, and when we were growing up, we didn't have social media. It's really important for us to monitor the kids stuff, but you're absolutely correct. If you get a prospective member, most people don't know how to completely block their Facebook page, whatever. My wife calls it creeping. Go creeping on their page and look and see what they've got of, see what they talk about. And you can, I don't post on social media that much just because the line of work I was in, but you can find out a lot about people by looking at their Facebook page and things of that nature.
That makes sense. One of the things that you mentioned is talking to the members of about they use social media. Obviously, my son is too young to use social media, so that's a conversation I won't be having with him for a
For a
few
while.
years yet. But for our listeners that that are listening right now, what's like three things that they should communicate to their sons and daughters about social media? Like, hey, do this, don't do that, do this. What are some three simple things they can do right away to
And
teach their
a lot
kids how
of
to be safe?
is monitor their Facebook page, see who their friends are, go through every once in a while, see what their friends are, and just pay attention to that. With iPhones and stuff, a lot of stuff we stress is sending pictures or posting pictures on social media. Don't be sending inappropriate pictures over text message. Or people think, I can do it on Snapchat and automatically, and it goes away, it deletes. No, no, no. It's stored somewhere. And with a well-written search warrant, you can go get what you thought was gone. So just, be careful on that. Monitor your kids on if they've got computers or iPads or even phones, put in the parental locks to where if a certain keyword comes up, it passes a password or something for them to go to a website and they don't have it, they can't get to it. So it's things of that nature. We were fortunate when my kids were growing up, there still was no social media. I'm not that old, but they didn't have it. By the time social media got big, they were either in college or going through their hiring process with the police department. And so, I told my kids from the time they was little, the things you do, the things you say, and now things you put on social media may not seem big, but when it comes time to get accepted into a college or university, it's still out there. You want to you say you graduate and you apply for a job, it's still out there. My kids applied for the police department in Dallas. First thing they wanted was their social media account. And they go back and look at these. So young people sometimes don't think long range about the things that they do today can come back and get them in 5 or 6 years down the road. So that's the main thing we told our kids is because they both said, we want to be police officers. Okay. You understand if you have anything on your record, you're out, you're done. And so it's the same thing as kids, what do you want to be? I want to be a fireman. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a nurse. Because you realize that the actions you take today can have consequences against you down the road that you're not thinking about. So you've got to prepare for your future and watch what you're doing today. Because if they get a minor in possession or anything like that, it goes on a record. And if somebody does an extensive background check, they're going to possibly find that. And then that's a mark on them going down the road to a successful job or actually getting a job over somebody else because they've got this mark on their record.
So, and that's true, not just with the police department, but like in my career in IT.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When I fill out an application, they want to know my social media accounts and they do a thorough background check as well, because I deal with sensitive personal information on a daily basis.
Yeah, any kind of professional occupation, we'll call it, or there's a degree involved or something like that, that company is going to do an extensive background check to see who they're getting. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got, a open container ticket or something like that, a DWI, say when you're 21, now you're 26, they're going to look on back that and says, well, this could be a red flag for an alcohol problem. Let's move to the next applicant. So,
right.
And, people may judge you unjust over one incident, but it's still there.
So Joe, before we start the wrap up, is there anything important you think that we haven't touched yet on lodge security or best practices on how to conduct yourself in a secure way?
Yeah, it's just, be aware of some red flags as they come up. If you get graffiti, anti-Masonic graffiti, somebody makes threats, things of that nature, you got to take the appropriate steps. Notify local law enforcement that's going on. That's the first thing. Get documentation of what's going on. If it continues, you may have to bite the bullet and hire an off-duty officer to sit in the parking lot while you have the meeting. I know lodges don't like hearing it's an extra expense, but what's your security worth? What's it worth to you? I'm sure that you could pass the hat, take up enough money to pay for the off-duty officer without having to get into the lodge budget. Take the necessary steps, lit parking lots. If you've got off-duty officers, if you've got officers, retired officers, things of that nature in your lodge, and consider whether you want to allow them to be armed inside the lodge room. A lot of lodges are dead set against it. And that's a hard decision that a lodge is going to have to make. There's, in my personal opinion, if you've got a retired or active law enforcement that's a member of your lodge, by all means, he should be carrying inside that lodge room. Because if it ever makes it inside the lodge room, a threat ever makes it inside the lodge room, that's the last stand. And there's a lot of people in there. If it's a past master, he's retired or active law enforcement, make him a Tyler. Set him outside the door. He'll know how to handle any situation that comes along at that point. But it's just be situational awareness when you walk out of the lodge room. Look and see if everything that you think's in place is in place. If there's strange vehicles in the parking lot, strange people in the parking lot, you may have to go back inside and regroup.
Joe, and I should have asked this earlier, actually. If, God forbid, a person at a lodge has to file a police report, could you give us a quick example of important information that they need to be able to convey to the officer?
Yeah, if it's about a person, be as detailed on the description as you can possibly be. Height, weight, age, hair, the way he was dressed, have a security system. He walked from this way to this way. If you're lucky enough to have a security system that does record, then if you're going to make a report, have some thumb drives on hand, be able to download that onto it. Officer gets there, give it to him. That way they don't have to come back out. They'll have it immediately. If you can show them the video, things of that nature. But just have as much information as you can have. If an officer does come out, and a lot of people, it's got to be the Worshipful Matchmaker reporter. It's got to be the secretary. No, anybody can make the report. But just be as detailed as you can about the situation, details about it, suspect description, vehicle description, things of that nature.
All right, Gabriel, do you have any other questions?
I think I've exhausted my questions at this time. I've definitely got.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for talking with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I do want to say a caveat. Our quote of the day, I do want to say it's from The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but I don't believe we're in a state of war. I believe the value of this quote is talking about preparedness, right? The quote is, "The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him, not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable." And again, that's from Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Ooh, that's good.
It's good because, like I said, I was on the police department for 29 years, and we trained, we qualified with our handguns, we did defensive tactics and things of that nature. I was fortunate enough in the 29 years that I was on the police department, I never had to discharge my weapon. And so most people think, officers go out just looking to get in shootings and stuff. We do not. It is a ton of paperwork, administrative hearings, administrative leave, things of that nature. I consider myself very fortunate in 29 years. I've had to pull my weapon, but I never had to discharge it. My wife was a Dallas officer for almost 20 years. She never had to discharge hers, but we prepared. Our oldest son was on the police department for 2.5 years and was involved in a shooting. So it can happen that, or we had, 49 years between us, me and my wife, and we're lucky enough we never had to discharge a weapon. And so we were always prepared. You always have to prepare yourself for what can happen and hope and pray that it never does. But we prepared like it was going to happen, and God was good to us, and it never happened, which we were both thankful for, but you have to prepare.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic talk. Again, thank you, Joe, for being with us.
All right. I'll do about this anything for you two guys if you needed to.
All right. We appreciate it. And likewise.
Thank you.
I know. Absolutely, gentlemen. If y'all need anything else, just give me a holler.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.